Laman namla rigner namngar de cehor la dang tomjru nojin dang zibngir dit dang soshi de jimbo dang dig ba hlui rig de njo wa ga de li dang ceyang mangi na zo ba go marnam go sir lemchin zamlang de rangji ne la nim che de limpag se zike de le jamar nyam che chang Dele walang shudna nyevaram cheda zanglang li tsa tselo huamed ne gyacha yanchut rangchi simchi ni shi na chavzhi shetang vzhi pa nyed limpag marnam rangchi gyapa te tselo ni gyar ngapchi toba go walang shudma li chi pchijig pa tselo ngap gya dramar nyantong te Li chi simchi tsani ngi pa yin kyabaran zanglang simchin chaktsir na woksir thale sonam chung jig glandar gongji yangchik tebzhin shong da jim ngomjut teni mangjigim cheda mkala nrojang gopchi gawa ze tselo khogmed nyomum ngongir med tetse karwa tangbo jibsha go chung med sagji kat nyam zipa te nirda 매장 깨바 빗mit 매 근장 지게 심친 지샤르 저 데네랑모 지그나 카양레 머나 지저 천치드 머지 저 대체 데네체당 우 저 총 뇽모 문기르 매장 랑스니 Dati langjan marnam chepa yin.
Good. So let us begin on the wish-fulfilling treasury. Currently, we have already covered the part on the heavenly abode. We've covered the formless realm, which is under the outline of the formation of the animate and inanimate world. In terms of the formation of the animate world, we've covered on the heavenly abodes of the form realm, formless realm, and the desire realm. In terms of the desire realm, we're currently talking about the Asuras. As you know, the 6 realms of Buddhism, we talk about the realm of humans, the realm of the celestial beings, the realm of Asuras, and then the 3 lower realms that includes the hungry ghost realm, the hell realm, and then the animal realm. If you studied teachings such as the words of my perfect teacher, the preliminary teachings, or the Abhidharma teachings, then whenever we talk about Ashura, you probably would generate a bit understanding on it already. Maybe you have already had some knowledge on it. But these teachings, none of those are as detailed as the ones that's expounded in the wish-fulfilling treasury. Now let's look at the formation, the existence of Asuras. Out of all the Asuras, there are the 5 categories or 5 types of Asuras that are divided based on their merits and their longevity. Previously, we've already studied that the Asuras, they live in the hollow area in the center of the Ashura, in the center of the Mount Sumeru, because it is the Mount Sumeru has a hollowed center, and the celestial beings of the desire realm, they slowly would descend from their realms, and then they would descend to become the Asuras. And in terms of the Asuras, there are 5 classes The first class is similar to the celestial beings in terms of their merits, their longevity. They're very similar to the celestial beings, and they have a very good, they have very auspicious connections, and they are very kind, and they have lots of faith to the Dharma. So they belong to the class that is similar to the celestial beings. There's another class that is called the Yakshas. The Yaksha class of the Asuras, they have lots of wealth, they have lots of power, and they have lots of miraculous power. In terms of the Yakshas, some of the Yakshas belong to the realm, belong to the animal realm, or some of them belong to the hungry ghost realm. Whenever we talk about the Vajrapani Bodhisattva, in fact, he's the Bodhisattva belong to the Yaksha class. Some of the protectors belong to the Yaksha class as well. Some of the protectors belong to the Rakshas class. It is because in their past, before they were subdued by Padmasambhava or the 8 Vidyadhars, they were non-humans, or they were the Yaksha, they were the Asuras, and were harming the sentient beings. But after being subdued and being taken by the compassionate and wise great masters, they vowed not to harm the sentient beings anymore. Therefore, nowadays we can see the protector, whenever we enter into the protector shrine, sometimes their appearance do not exactly look like celestial beings, sometimes not exactly like the hell realm beings, sometimes they have different appearances and different poses. There are definitely a great myriad of the types and appearances of them. In terms of the Raksha, so that is the Rakshas class. And then the next one is a coarse Mara, rather malicious Mara. It is because this type of Asuras, they have rather very inferior aspiration, and they're very interested in the inferior and even devious deeds. So these kinds of Asuras, they belong to this Mara class. Majority of them, in fact, can be classified or categorized into the hungry ghosts. The next type, or the next disposition of the Asuras, are the Yakshas, or are the Rakshas. The Rakshas are also harmful. Sometimes they're harming the sentient beings, and sometimes they're more similar to the hungry ghost that roams about. Remember, we studied in the previous class that there is a subcontinent right beside the Jambudvipa, is called Chamara continent. And there is a kingdom, it's called the kingdom of Rakshas. Padmasambhava, in fact, also went there to liberate the beings of the Rakshas. So he manifested himself as the king of Rakshas. There are lots of stories in sutras and in the Jataka stories, where it says that the Buddha also talks about there are the Rakshas women that eats the hearts of the human beings and drinks the blood of human, and so on and so forth. Lots of those malicious activities. Those are also included in the biographies of the great masters and so on. Lots of stories in the Buddhist stories. The fifth class of all the Asuras are the malicious Nagas. In terms of their body, the look of their body, or the provisions they have, the happiness and the suffering that they have, they all manifest in the form that takes a half that's similar to the celestial beings, and the other half is just like the malicious nagas. Nowadays, we see lots of movies that has these kinds of appearances or these kinds of depictions. In fact, this type of asuras, they belong to rather the dull capacity. According to the Shurangama Sutra, in the later part, I believe in the 9th chapter, it talks about that there are 4 types of birth of asuras. That's out of one of them, it is similar to the celestial beings, that is manifestation. There are the ones that's born from womb, just like human beings, and there are the ones that's born just like hungry ghosts, or born in eggs, and the most inferior are born in the similar way as the animals, inside the water, in the base of the ocean. Therefore, in many of the sutras of the Buddha, he stated that we need to use our wisdom eye to make the observation, because there is a category of fish that are the manifestation of their asuras, and they live in the bottom of the ocean. So the asuras take different types of birth, and living in different realms. And some of them live in the celestial realm, some of them in the human realm, some of them live in hungry ghost realm, and in the animal realm. They live in different countries as well. They live in the different areas, not necessarily live in the hell realm, because it is not stated. But the asuras sometimes can be categorized in different sutras or shastras as part of the animal realm or part of the hungry ghost realm. Some of the sutras or shastras stated that their asuras belong to the celestial realm. Now, on this gold ground, this golden ground, there lived asuras. The asuras and the king of asuras, their lifespan and the merits are similar to the Treasury heaven. Some of the asuras, they share the similar merits and longevity to the 4 heavenly kings, and some of the asuras, they live in human realm, some of them live in oceans and forests and in islands, but their lifespan is not definite. It is not to say that they live for so-and-so years or so-and-so kalpas. There is no specific time, because the spectrum of their lifespan is rather quite wide. Also, the sizes of their body, there is no certain number of it. Some of them are really tall, especially the kinds of asuras belong to the celestial class, and some of them are rather very short if they belong to the animal realm or the human realm. According to the Sutra of Right Mindfulness, it says that Ashura belong to the category of the hungry ghost and animal realm. According to the Avatamsaka Sutra, it says that Ashuras belong to the celestial realm. But that's just the majority of them. When the various sutras expounding the Ashuras categories, that takes large numbers of them, or taking the main considerations of them in certain categories. When we study wish-fulfilling treasury, I think after you studied it, you will be able to understand that it is so rich in its extensive wisdom. It may seem to be such a short text, but it included so many teachings that is all-pervasive and could perfectly be explained in the Sutrayana and Vajrayana. When it comes to Ashuras, in some of the stories, for example, in the contemplation on the Ocean of Samadhi Sutra, it was back in the time the celestial beings from the Abhashvara heaven descend to the human realm to bathe, and then the essence of the 4 great elements being blown by wind and scatters. Then all of them became eggs. And then after 8,000 years, a woman was born. And this woman was rather very special because she had 99 heads, 99 mouths, 24 hands, and very tall. This woman was born inside the ocean. Then some of the seeds from the ocean enters into her body, and after 8,000 years, she gave birth to a man. The man was extremely tall, much taller than human beings, maybe 4 times of the height of human beings. This man also had 9 heads, 100 eyes, extremely big and strong, and very proficient at fighting, very powerful. It is said that they are the ancestors of the Asuras. That was a story told in the Contemplation on the Ocean of Samadhi Sutra. A great number of great masters of the past, whenever they talk about Asuras, they would quote this particular sutra. So we can see the Asuras are sentient beings, are this kind of sentient beings, or the sentient beings like such. And after this class, you should understand that Asuras are in all the 6 realms, and they have different embassies in different countries and different offices in different places. Of course, jokes aside, the Asuras are indeed very powerful. Some of them live in heaven realm, some of them in the hell realm, some of them in the hungry ghost realm. Maybe they're thinking about buying some properties in hell realm, because the Asuras also create lots of negative karma as well. The hell realm must very much welcome them. By now, we've already covered the celestial realms of the formless realm, the form realm, and desire realm. Also, in the desire realm, Longchenpa also expounded on the Asuras. Now, to continue, we will talk about human beings. Mainly, Longchenpa talks about the formation of the 4 great continents, especially the formation of the Jambudvipa. In terms of the 8 subcontinents, Longchenpa didn't expound on it, but he talks about the formation of the 4 great continents. Now let's look at it. Over here, it says that from the Abhishvaras, there descend the beings of Jambudvipa, the human beings of Jambudvipa. The Abhishvaras heaven means to illuminate or to shine up. There are the different translations in the Chinese language. Many different sutras, including Agama Sutra, use an alternative Chinese translation, and according to many different sutras that's popular in China mainland, the translation is a bit different. But from the Abhishvaras heaven, because of the celestial beings, the celestial beings have a waning of their merit, therefore they descend from the celestial heaven. Due to their karma, just like a drop of water, the celestial beings would drop into the human realm, and then that's the proliferation, the beginning of the proliferation of the human beings. This is one way of explaining it, one explanation. And then according to the Tantrayana, it says that there was once 2 devas living, 2 devis living in Tushita heaven. One of them was called the sun, and the other one called the moon. And they also descend to Jambudvipa, and slowly that is the starting point of the proliferation of human beings in Jambudvipa. And Longchenpa over here made a clarification saying that these two explanations, one being descending from Tushita and the other one descending from the Abhashvara's heaven, are not contradicting to each other. Why is that? It is because at the time of the formation of the Abhashvara's heaven, there are different names to the heavens. For example, the Saha world can also be called the abode of joy or the Tushita abode. Therefore, the celestial beings descend from that particular heavenly realm. The name could be the Abhashvara's heaven or could be the Tushita heaven. So maybe they share the same name. Also, because the celestial beings are manifested or emanation. So the sun, the two celestial beings, the sun and moon, after they descended to the Jambudvipa with their emanation, then slowly there is the proliferation of human beings. There is another explanation, that is, the Brahmas then came down to the human realm and slowly proliferated human race. The celestial beings, at the beginning, they had some lights, luminosity. There is some luminosity from their body, and because of their merit, the meals and food and all the provisions naturally would manifest. But after a long period of time, because of the waning of the merits, then they lost the light. Also, they lost all of those provisions that's manifested out of the merit. So that's the starting points of the sentient beings living in Jambudvipa. Now, in terms of the other continents, some said that they are the descendants of the celestial beings of the Treasury heaven, and all the subcontinents are also having those human beings living there are the descendants of the other celestial beings. This way of explaining, this explanation are completely different than the Darwinians' explanation on the evolution. Completely different than his theory on the origin of species. Why is that? It is because, according to, for example, words of my perfect teacher, it says that the Devis of the second dhyana heavens, when they see the incidence of the 7 great fires and 1 flood in the desire realm, they got really scared because they were really afraid that their heaven is also going to get destroyed. But the old celestial beings, they know that it's not going to ascend all the way to their heavenly abode. However, all the Brahma heavens, all the 3 levels of the Brahma heavens at the time of the kalpa of degradation, their world will be destroyed. After the degradation of their abode, then there eventually will be the empty kalpa and then the kalpa formation again. At that time, the world will slowly form, and after the formation of it, the beings of the Abhashvara's heaven, because their world were not destroyed, so the beings from there would slowly descend. And because of the Brahmas descend from there, they did not know that there were higher levels. They thought that they created the world.
啊，就是这样说的话呢，就是为什么说是人类是刚开始的话呢？
So the sentient beings descend from the Abhishvaras heaven because whenever we look at this kalpas, the cycle of the 4 kalpas, the kalpa formation, duration, degradation, and empty kalpa, the human beings, we can see that after the empty kalpa, the beings from the Abhishvaras heaven descend to this world and then becomes the human race. So this is to say that the Buddhist description of the beginning of human race is rather than evolution, it is retrogression.
然后按照达尔文的进化论的话呢，大家也是应该知道说就是它呢实际上是
because there is the retrogression of the merit. That is why the celestial beings at the beginning, they had lights, they had very little vex or very little to none afflictions, but slowly retrogressed to what we are now. But according to the evolution theory from the Darwinian evolution theory, we know that at the beginning there were oceanic animals and slowly evolved into apes, and then there's then they evolved into the Homo erectus, for example, the Homo erectus of Beijing, of Yunnan, and so on and so forth. So human beings are considered as part of the animals, and then because of the changes and evolution of the animals, they slowly become human beings. And human beings slowly got more and more smart, and eventually we will become the celestial beings because we will ascend to become the celestial beings. So these two theories are completely different. They're from very different angles. The Buddhist teaching said that we descend, and then the evolution theory said that we would ascend all the way from ocean and to human beings, and eventually probably become all celestial beings later. We really need to contemplate upon this. If you can remember your past life, if we all have clairvoyance of our past life, we would probably remember the time of it being an ape from the past, if the evolution theory is true. But since we don't have that ability of clairvoyance to further investigate on the evolution theory, I think we need to further considerate the two theories and pay attention to how everything truly changes. I believe the majority of us, we studied evolution theory since a young age because somehow evolution theory became a mainstream teaching that's very dominant in our education system, and we've studied it since a young age. I'm not so sure if you've ever considered the truth within that theory, if you've ever contemplated on the alternative possibilities. Therefore, I hope this could further expand your horizon on the possibilities of the beginning of human race. Most of the people, the moral values and the value system were established at the time between 5 to maybe to teenage time, and that at that time, the influence of your teacher, of your parents, of the education that you receive are really, really important. But if you were to be trapped by whatever values you were set in that education, then I believe it is completely impossible for you to sit here and wear the robes. If you were to think that you were a product of the evolution from an oceanic animal and do not believe in past and future lives, then that kind of way of understanding and of thinking is completely narrow. So we need to really expand our thinking, our scope of consideration. When we look at the Darwinian evolution theory, all the way from the 1859, that was about over 100 years ago, was composed by Darwin when he was 49 years of age. And before him, people thought that human beings were created by God, or in another word, descended from the heavenly realm. So there is the common understanding of that. But after his writing, after his theory, just within as short as over 100 years, the mainstream understanding of human race, of the beginning of the sentient beings, has completely changed. On one hand, Charles Darwin was indeed very smart. He was from a Jewish family. His family inherited a great amount of wisdom and wealth. He was considered as one of the most wealthiest in the UK. When he attended the Edinburgh University, he studied medical science, and he wasn't really good at it. So because of that, he was then later sent to Cambridge University. Over there, he studied biology. But he wasn't really interested in biology. He wanted to spend his tuition in traveling around the world, which took him 5 years of time. His father didn't want to pay for his trip, but his grandfather, I think, paid for it. After spending a lot of money and traveling around the world by ship at that time, he indeed collected lots of evidence. He went to many different places, including Africa. After coming back from the 5 years journey, he started to write his book on the origin of species. After writing that, he was quite concerned about his theory, because at that time, most people believed in the divine creation theory. As you know, at the end of 19th century, there were lots of corruptions from various aspects of religion. And many people really wanted to overturn the divine creation theory. In need of something that would fill the gap of the creation or of the origination of all the species. The Darwinian theory, the Darwin's writing provided such evidence, which seems to be quite extensive in evidence. So many people at that time started to recommend this book, including lots of countries in Asia. And slowly, because of that propagation, because of the alternative agendas behind their motives of propagating these books, his book became the standard books that's been taught in schools, and then become the mainstream theory, and then being considered as science. Somehow, science seems to be higher, to be more sophisticated than theology. It is considered more sophisticated than theology. In fact, theology or religion in general provides metaphysical understanding of things, but science could study study material. We can see beginning from the end of 19th century, people paid much more attention and placed great importance on material, but neglect the spiritual value. Now, when we look at how at the beginning of the human race, the celestial beings in fact descend from the Abhashvara's heaven, and then at the beginning of the human race, people had the lifespan of tens of thousands of years. Many people think it's just myth, but truly, those myths, those stories can be the history of humans. Lots of the teachings in Buddhism, if we were to really use our time to study it, I'm sure you'll find it very interesting. I think I've mentioned it before, the Sumer culture that's located, or it was located around Iraq. We know that all the ancient cultures, including the Chinese, the Egyptian, the Indian, and the Babylon, those ancient cultures, they existed about 7,000 or 8,000 years ago. Some of those cultures had those written history or written records about 3,000 BCE. So some of the human beings' history are recorded in such a way. But of course, it's very difficult for us to study it further because of the language barrier and the time and so on. After the Babylon culture, many of those are very difficult to be proved. When we look into the theory of evolution, we need to definitely spend more time to look for the evidence from the archaeology, from the historical records. And those evidence are really important. We shouldn't be biased when we look for evidence. We shouldn't be influenced by if so-and-so were very famous, then we should believe in their evidence. We shouldn't be doing that at all. And we shouldn't be taking those evidence just because so-and-so family or group were very wealthy and influential. And because of that, they had the advantage to expound their thinking into the world. We need to investigate into each and every evidence. We need to look for the truth, because truth usually are in the hands of the minorities. When I was translating the wish-fulfilling treasury, I watched this short video, and in the short video, it talks about the Sumer culture. I thought it was very interesting. It's very short, just 4 or 5 minutes. Within it, it talks about how there are kings that had the lifespan of so-and-so tens of thousands of years of age, and in reign for so-and-so years. But nowadays, we living as human beings, we only have 100 years of age. We can't fathom that period of time. When we look at the Queen of England, she's in reign for 70 years now, which is considered as very long. But let's compare it to the past records of their kings. That's probably tenfold of her reign time. We need to definitely contemplate on that. I'm definitely not saying that what science said is not correct. The science could be right. I'm not saying that the Buddhism said is not correct. The Buddhism teaching is also correct. But we need to look at it with our wisdom, and we need to have the space to think about it ourselves. The human beings could be descended from the celestial realm or could be ascended from the animal realm, but we need to think about it. I don't think I'm as stupid as animal realms. My past first life not necessarily is an animal. That at least is what I thought. But also, I don't think I was a celestial being directly descended from Apashvara's heaven, because I don't have that kind of meditative dhyana. So we need to definitely look into the different possibilities and contemplate upon it. Especially, it's such a grand question to contemplate upon. In our books, in the past, in my textbook, we never studied quantum physics. We studied Newton's law of physics. Nowadays, there are lots of new science and new technology, and we ourselves, we need to really move forward, and we need to expose ourselves to the new knowledge and new wisdom. As we have to understand all the teachings that we received in our education, in elementary school, in various levels of education, those textbooks were produced based on the history and based on the social status at that time. And that's how the books were made. Now let's look at this video and look at the explanation of the Sumerian culture. The Sumerian king's list is something that's discovered from the archaeological sites of Mesopotamia. It is said that it is the most ancient list of kings that is discovered. And on this list, it describes the different kings' lifespan and the time of their reign. However, this list created lots of controversy because there are lots of myths around this particular king's list. On one hand, it records many of the names of the kings. At the same time, those lifetime of those kings are extremely long. For example, the first king, it says that he descended from heaven, from the celestial realm, and his name is Alulim, and the time of reigning this in that area is 28,800 years. The second king, his name is Alaljar, and he stayed as the ruler for 36,000 years. And then the third king, his name is Emenluana, and his time is 43,000 years. And the fourth is Emengalana for 28,800 years. The fifth one, Dumzid, 36,000, and the sixth one is Bizazid, and 28,000 years. And the seventh, Emendurana, who stayed in reign for 21,000 years. The eighth one, Ubaratutu, reigned for 18,600 years. So he reigned for the shortest period of time out of the 8 kings. Altogether, they reigned for 240,000 years. And then after that, there was the Great Flood. And then the names of the kings in this king's list continued to go on, except that the lifespan and the time of reigning were much shorter. Many different myths and stories tell the story of flood. In the Bible and in the Chinese folklore stories, there are lots of descriptions of the Great Flood. The archaeologists couldn't really prove it yet. However, whenever we look at the myth, the explanation of myth is the story that tells about the ancient histories of humans, and that's related to God, especially in the translation of Chinese. So we can understand it as the stories of gods. You must feel that this is all made up. Why should I believe it? However, if you keep looking at the list of kings, the most interesting part is that in the later part of this list, all the names of the kings and the timeline of the kings are extremely they are extremely accurate. Especially after this list, there is the continuation of the list of the Babylon kings and then list of Assyrian kings. The rest of those lists are extremely accurate. Especially when we look at the Assyrian time and Babylon time, we can see that since they're much closer to our now history, it's very easy for us to find evidence to prove them. And according to the two later lists of the kings, also cross-reference with the Sumerian kings list. Also, the list were found not only just one copy, rather there are 16 copies that's been discovered from various archaeological sites. One more thing that's worth to be mentioned is that those kinds of lists were chiseled on one piece of rock. It is not like there is a huge gap in between. Also, in the Sumerian king, it is said that there was one king who was considered as one of the first kings reigning the region. His name is Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh was stated that he reigned for 126 years. After him, the other kings reigned for a much shorter period of time. So the Sumerians were quite accurate in terms of recording time. It is said in Gilgamesh that Gilgamesh was partly human and partly God. But after him, the beings reigned for a much shorter period of time, for 36, for 9 years, and so on.
只是，可能我们，因为大家的价值观有点不同，就我像刚才
Because of our values are so different,
就是这种说法是可能是一种圣化。
I thought to show this video to you to further expound on the teaching on the descending theory from the Abhishvara's heaven. It could be a myth, it could be a folklore, and maybe nowadays people who are so immersed in science cannot adapt to it. But I think this video definitely could show us a new perspective. Indeed, the archaeology, in terms of the history of archaeology, there are lots of gaps. It can't really fully explain our past, our history. But the teachings that's given in Buddhism can provide a different explanation and alternative, so you can contemplate upon it. Wallace later explained that life and death is all-permeating, it is constantly going, it is a constant pattern. However, human beings could encounter situations of changes, and because of that, people kept on saying, people kept on explaining the evolution theory, saying that human beings are the product of the changes that's occurred from animals. I didn't finish reading the whole evolution theory. But I've read *Sapiens*, A Brief History of Humankind. The author also explained and repeated some of the framework of evolution. So from our current value system, many people in fact really enjoy this type of teaching. As I've said, that people nowadays don't really like to believe in theology anymore. The young people nowadays are more prone to believe in science or the evolution theory. To further contemplate on the possibility of being human beings or animals in the past. If we were to look at the history of the recent 2,000 years, let it be Confucius, Mencius, or Buddha, all of those people, those sages, their wisdom compared to the wisdom that we have nowadays, have we really evolved from their wisdom? Or have we retrogressed from that? Of course, on one hand, we didn't have airplanes, and we didn't have trains and high-speed trains. Indeed, I agree that there is the evolution of the materialistic productions of human beings. But according to Darwinian's explanation, the human beings should be more and more smart and happy and without afflictions. So that's how we should become. But are we really like so? I think nowadays we probably had more of those problems. Therefore, whenever you're presented with a different theory than what you've heard before, I don't think you should mark it as this is superstition. That is not necessary because we still need to contemplate upon it. The evolution theory has been very popular and dominating for the 100 years. But because of its popularity, most people believe in it. When I went to Africa, I specifically asked the different schools whether they study evolution theory or something else. Some of the schools in certain countries, they still study evolution, and some of them study theology. And the schools that study theology, they completely oppose evolution theory, saying that the evolution theory is completely made up and it is only part of the mainstream understanding because of some hidden agendas. Anyhow, we definitely need to use wisdom to further analyze it. But this question is indeed very big. We need to contemplate upon it. Some of the myths or some of the stories given in the Bible, for example, let it be Adam and Eve, or let it be the myth of Pangu that opens the cosmic egg. Lots of those myths and stories all talk about something that's very similar. Maybe God truly exists. Maybe the myth is a true story, part of the true story, but only because the time has been way too long and we can't really remember it, and things are not really passed down. There's long gaps in between, or the words were not kept because of the natural disasters and the impact of nature and so on. Since those records are no longer available, and it's definitely difficult to restart the human history to then look into the history, so I definitely hope that we can contemplate upon this particular question. Otherwise, when we have conflicts of value, if we don't put thinkings into it, it would be quite problematic. Let's now look at Jambuvipa. It says that the Jambuvipa beings, because of the karma's difference at the beginning, the human being's lifespan can extend all the way to infinite numbers of age and slowly decrease to 80,000, which is quite incredible. In the earlier video where it talks about the Sumerian culture, a king was in reign for 40,000 years and so on, some for 28,000 years. But when I heard it, because all of those words were chiseled onto rock, so they were preserved. After hearing that, though I had never been to Iraq and probably don't dare to go there, but all of those archaeological discoveries over there can definitely reserve and prove lots of things that transcends the time. I believe there was once the UK scientist or a UK archaeologist who spent 12 years and discovered 9,000 articles from there. Unlike Charles Darwin, who probably hired someone to write his book. Of course, I'm joking simply. I'm not trying to refute the Darwinian theory. In fact, I think I should praise it because it really provides us another opportunity to make observation with our wisdom. We should look at what is the evidence that could prove his theory, because his theory only existed or only created for about over 100 years. If we were to look into the evidence, let it be apes transforming into human beings or oceanic animals transforming into human beings, are there different fossils that could prove it? Are there the transformation that's recorded? The sentient beings' karma is completely different, and some of the human beings, whether they transformed from ape or from fish, I think it needs a lot of research and exploration from scientists. With those kinds of research, you will be able to figure out how long that changed, since when it started to change, how long it took, in tens of thousands of years, or how many tens of thousands of years. Did you see it with your eyes, or is that just a theory? So all of those needs to be further investigated. Now over here it is says that at the beginning of the human race, the beings would live for 80,000 years, and the mature the human's body would be 32 elbow length, and then later decrease to 20, and then 16, and then 8. At the time of human beings have the age of 100 years of age, the body length would be 4 elbows of length. Longzhenpa said that at the time of human beings have the lifespan of 54 of age, their height would be about 3.5 elbows. Later, of course, in the philosophical Treasury, he also further explained on it, saying that this is in fact not the most absolute teaching. We can later further analyze it. Later, eventually, human beings would reach to the lifespan of only 10 years of age. At that time, the height of the human beings would be rather very short. Now let's look at the human beings living in the East continent, the Purva continent. The beings have the lifespan of 250 years, and their height is of 8 elbows. In the west, the Aparagodia continent, the beings have the height of 16 elbows, and the lifespan extends to 500 years. The north continent of Uttarakuru continent, the beings would live for 1,000 years, and their height is about 32 elbows. Because the beings over there, their lifespan is constant and same as their height. According to Abhidharma, it says that because they enjoy this kinds of full fruition, full mature fruition, therefore they would not be able to attain they would not be able to take precepts. So from this aspect, living in Uttarakuru, on one hand, they do have lots of merit. However, compared to the Jambudvipa beings like us, they would not be able to take the precepts. Therefore, they would not be able to attain liberation, because they have a fate that is already constant, that is already written. After they reach 1,000 years of age, they would die and then would be reborn into a Shrimshas heaven. Previously, we already talked about the different shapes of the four continents. And the people's face, the shape of their face, are the same as the shape of the continents. In Jambudvipa, the shape of the continent is in the shape of scapula, so it goes to the shape of the people's face, and the sky color is blue. In the Puravidiha, the east continent, and the shape is half circle, and the sky color is white. In the Uttarakuru, the north continent, the shape of their continent is square and the same as their face of the human beings live there, and the sky is yellow. In the Gaudiya continent, the shape is a circle, and the face of the people's face are circle, and the sky is red. Previously, we've already covered that. Those are the descriptions of the four great continents, as well as the history of proliferation of the humans over there. So let's stop here today.